All right, let's dive in. Today, we are putting on our detective hats and becoming financial investigators. You know why? Because when you're looking to buy a business, the story the seller tells you is one thing, but the real story, that's always buried deep inside the numbers. Our mission is to uncover it.
I mean, this analogy is just perfect. Think about it. When you're buying a business, the official financial statements, well, that's like the new coat of paint and the perfectly staged furniture in the house. It's all designed to look amazing. But our job as the buyer is to be that inspector who walks right past all the shiny stuff and goes straight to the basement to check the foundation for cracks. Because those hidden problems, they can turn a dream deal into an absolute nightmare.
And that really brings us to the central mystery we have to solve. What is the actual, honest-to-goodness difference between the profit a business says it makes on paper and the real, sustainable cash it can generate year in and year out? Finding the answer to that question is everything. It's how we find the true value.
Now let's get right to the heart of a buyer's psychology, this idea of perceived risk. Look, every single buyer is worried. They're anxious that the business isn't going to be what they were promised. So our entire investigation, every document we pour over, it's all designed to do one thing: bring that anxiety down. We're trying to replace their fear with cold, hard facts. So this formal investigation, it has a name. It's called financial due diligence. And let's be super clear here. This is not just about checking the seller's math. No. This is a deep investigative dive into the actual health, the true stability of that business. And this slide right here highlights a hugely important difference. See, an audit just looks backward. It asks, hey, were the numbers from last year correct? It's about historical accuracy. But due diligence, that's about looking forward. It asks a much bigger, more important question for a buyer. Are these profits actually repeatable? It's all about figuring out if this business is a sound investment for the future.
And you have to understand, this isn't something you knock out over a weekend. A real, proper investigation takes time. We're talking weeks, sometimes months if it's a complicated business. Trying to rush this process is probably the single biggest mistake you can make. It's how you miss the critical clues. So, if we're the financial detective on the case, what's our number one tool? What's our magnifying glass? Well, it all comes down to making adjustments, tweaking the numbers the seller gives us to find the real story hiding underneath. And this is that magnifying glass. It's a concept called the add back. Look, it's really common for business owners to run some personal expenses through the company or to have one-time costs that won't happen again. An add back is where we just remove those things from the equation to get a clean picture of the business's actual profitability. We're trying to see what the earnings would look like for a new owner. And this table just lays out the kinds of clues we're hunting for perfectly. But pay close attention to that last column. Documentation needed. This is so important. A good detective never ever relies on hearsay. You can't just take the seller's word for it. Every single adjustment, every add back has to be supported by a paper trail. Invoices, bank statements, contracts, you name it. You can think of these as the usual suspects in any investigation. You know, the owner's personal car lease, a family member who's on the payroll but doesn't actually work there, maybe a big vacation disguised as a business trip. Now, these might be perfectly fine for the current owner's taxes, but they have nothing to do with the core business a new owner is about to take over. Okay, let's shift gears to what is often one of the most critical and, honestly, one of the most argued about pieces of evidence in a deal: net working capital. This is where a lot of deals can get made or fall apart completely. So let's put it simply, this is the cash the business needs just to keep the lights on. It's the money you need to pay your suppliers, to make payroll, to buy inventory before you get paid by your customers. The buyer has to be absolutely sure that the seller is leaving enough cash in the business to keep it running smoothly from day one. Because this working capital number can swing around, the buyer and seller agree on a target amount that needs to be in the business on the day it closes. This whole negotiation process is designed to be fair. It stops a seller from, say, draining the bank accounts by collecting all their receivables super aggressively, or just not paying their bills right before they hand over the keys, leaving the new buyer in a huge cash crunch. So let's just walk through a really quick example to make this crystal clear. Let's say the buyer and seller agree in the contract that the business needs $10 million in net working capital to operate normally, okay? That $10 million becomes the official target. But then, a few months after the deal closes, they do the final accounting. This is called the true-up. And it turns out there was only $8 million actually left. That's a $2 million shortfall. Well, because of that agreement,
the seller now has to cut the buyer a check for that $2 million. It's an absolutely critical protection for the buyer. Now, any good detective is constantly on the lookout for red flags, the kind of stuff that could kill the entire deal. Like, what if almost all the revenue comes from one single customer? What happens if that customer leaves? Or what if there's a key contract that can't even be transferred to a new owner? I mean, these aren't just little problems. These are major foundational cracks that could bring the whole thing tumbling down. But here's the thing. Finding those red flags doesn't automatically mean the case is closed. Not at all. Actually, the goal of this whole investigation isn't to kill the deal. It's to get all the facts, the good, the bad, and the ugly, out on the table so you can build a fair, watertight deal that's based on reality, not just wishful thinking. At the end of the day, it all comes down to transparency. It's that simple. When all the evidence is out there, when the add-backs are all documented, and the working capital target is fair, then both sides can finally move forward with confidence. They know they've landed on a price that truly reflects the business's real potential. And I love this quote because it's a critical final warning for any aspiring financial detective. Rushing the investigation is the #1 reason people miss clues and make bad deals. Like it says, time pressure leads to bad data. You have to give yourself the time to get the facts straight. Period. So here's the bottom line. Every single business tells a story with its numbers. By approaching the purchase not just as a buyer, but as a detective, you can learn to look past what's on the surface, to read between the lines, and to uncover the real story. And that is how you make a smart, informed, and truly successful investment.